Good morning, welcome to today's RC Coffee Chat. Right, getting straight into the meat of today we are going to be looking at 3D printing for RC modelers. So if you would like to understand the whole process literally from the beginning of 3D printing all the way through to a finished product, which we will have a not so warped finished product. So put my hand behind there. That's one which I printed out last night and took it off the bed when it was too hot and it all got warped. So yeah, you're going to find out with the real life usage of a 3D printer. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to design this. You can see there's a sketch of it here in the background. We're going to create that from scratch. We're going to get it into the G code for the printer. We're going to stick it in the printer. I've got a little hidden camera. If I quickly turn that on for you, we're going to have a look at the printer bed as well. We're going to see the item printing off, and we are going to have a damn good chit chat about 3D printing in general. So those of you which already have 3D printers, please do join in with any questions or comments anybody has, and you can see the live chat going on above my head. So if you've got experience with 3D printing, feel free to chip in with anybody else's questions about this hobby, or this part of the hobby, should I say. And if you've got no idea, well, you're going to find out the whole story literally in this live episode. Now, obviously, if you're watching the recorded version, you can leave any comments or questions down in the video, underneath the video description in the comments area. And if it's your first time here, I'm Matt, welcome aboard. We run these RC Coffee Chats every Wednesday at 6 AM GMT, or BST, I should say now, which is different times across the time world, and there's the time zone conversions are in the video description below for you. So with that said, we do need to get our pace on, and I will explain this in a little bit more detail in a few moments time, but we need to design this, we need to get this into our software, we need to get it sliced onto an SD card and stuck in the 3D printer so that can get running in the background while we have a deeper chat about 3D printing in general. And I have a whole great big bag of goodies to share with you of stuff which I printed and got going in progress, again with practical examples. I've got the mini Drac here next to me, got some covers which I printed, and there's some Fat Shot goggles over there as well, and we'll be looking at some of the parts which you could be printing on your printer. So with that said, a very good morning, very good afternoon to those of you which are on here live as well. Simon's FPV, which printer do you buy? Don't know just yet. We will look at the two main types of printers, but before we do that, what we're actually going to do, like I said, today we are going to build something from scratch so that you can see the whole process through. Now, we will also get to the topic about CAD, or computer-aided design, different types of software which are out there. That is a topic which we will cover, but I do want to make a point. We are literally just going to start from scratch-ish. I am going to cheat a touch because I do have some markers on the screen. Now, with that said, I'm just going to talk you through what I'm doing. Is probably the best thing, and this will make more sense to you as we go along. And don't worry, if you're not very good at this, then I'll put my hand up and say I'm not very good at this either, but I can create basic objects very, very simply and very, very quickly. And all I've done, I watched 2 videos on YouTube on how to use SketchUp, and I've got pretty damn far with creating stuff for my own uses and abuses. And if this part of the 3D printing thing doesn't interest you at all, you just want to go and download a file, we'll be discussing sites like Thingiverse with you very, very shortly. So with that said, let's get cracking. What I am going to quickly do is go and create a rectangle block, which is, or should be, and that's not going particularly well, is it? Let me get myself zoomed out. And there's nothing quite like doing this stuff live, because we make real mistakes. So let me just go in here, like so, online. And what we're going to do, we are going to get this to do a 36 by 36 rectangle, which we've now just been drawn there. Now, this is the thing about one thing which I've learned with 3D modeling and actually creating stuff from scratch. It's much actually easier to work in 2D, so create like a flat image and then scale things up. Now, what do I mean by scale things up? By the way, I'm using a tool called Sketchup. We will get to these types of tools in a few moments' time. And you'll see me, I've just been erased that platform up, which you probably can't see. So let me see if I can move this onto my screen a little bit more so you can see what's going on. Right. Probably when it comes to designing stuff to be 3D printed, the most important tool in your arsenal is actually like a measurement tool. And the reason being is not only a measurement tool in the actual application itself, it's a pair of 3D calipers. So what we're actually going to be building is, and creating, if I can unplug this on here, is a little, nothing like doing this live, a flight controller mount. So those of you which have been following along with the iNav series, is that maybe you would like to build your own or create your own flight controller mount to mount your flight controller on. And one thing which I noticed that there was lots and lots of flight controller mounts out there, but none of them did the bare minimum height, which I worked out using a pair of calipers was 3.6 millimeters from the lowest or the highest chip on the bottom of the board, so that I could have it mounted as low as possible in the model, but still have a decent base for me to be able to glue that in or mount that into the model itself. So that's what we're going to be making right now. Now, I do got a funny feeling my measurements are going to be slightly off, although I do have a little bit of a cheat going on in here. So that was 36 millimeters. So I now need to measure in 3 millimeters, and it is telling me in the bottom right hand corner, which you can't see at the moment, that I am going in 3 millimeters. And like I said, I wanted to do this from scratch, and it is telling me in the bottom right hand corner that that's 3 millimeters, and you've probably seen that just on the screen as well. So when it comes to, like I said, when it comes to actually designing something in software like this, the most important tool in your arsenal is this tape measure. And in SketchUp, which is a CAD or computer-aided design program, is that it also adds these little guides on here. So again, I'm trying to keep the pace going. Now we are going to be using M3 bolts or screws, and they're 3 millimeters. So we need that inner circle to be 1.5. So we end up with a whole the radius of the hole which we make is going to be 3 millimeters. So I'm going to quickly do that on each side, 1.5, and we'll go in there as well, 1.5. and 1.5 there as well. And then we also need to take that right out to the edge. So you'll see me right now, all I'm doing is basically making some pretty circles. Now these will make more sense to you, and if you've seen the previous, if you see the item which I've got there, what I'm doing is actually making these little pieces here which we put the screws in, or the bolts in to hold down the flight controller itself. Now this is actually going to work in 2 directions. Now I'm going to go and grab that move tool. Now the first thing which I'm going to do is that I'm going to drag that down to, needs to go -2, and I've done that wrong I think. No, that looks right. And we'll go down 2 millimeters, and again I'm just looking in the bottom right hand corner of the screen because it tells me the depths which I'm working to. And now I'm actually going to bring these up, and as I used the calipers, and it worked out to be 3.6 millimeters. And this is one of the things which you can do with 3D printing. You can be very, very precise in what you're doing. So the moment it's telling me that's 3 millimeters, I'm actually going to change that to 3.6, and you'll see that's just raised up a bit. We'll move that one up as well, 3.6, and we'll move that one up as well, 3.6. And then we'll move that one up as well, 3.6. So that's what we've been and done. Like I said, we'll keep it really, really basic. What we now need to do is turn this into a file which our printer software can then go and use and slice up. Now we will get to the topic about 3D printing actually being a lie. Now that may sound a little bit strange to you. Matt, we're talking about 3D printing, but you're saying 3D printing's a lie? Well, here's the thing, is that most 3D printers actually do 2D printing. So if you think about a loaf of bread, okay, so you imagine a sliced loaf of bread, but as a whole, it's a whole loaf of bread. So if you stand that up on its end, so you've got all the slices in there, is that's actually what goes on, is that your printer or a 3D printer actually prints out each layer one at a time, and because it's melted plastic the vast majority of the times, it just welds itself as it goes up each layer. Or in the simple example, you've got a loaf of bread and it's just like adding another slice of bread in until you've got a loaf of bread coming out in your printer, in this case just being made out of plastic. So we've been and created that file. We now need to export it, and there's a standard file type called STL. So I'm going to go and export that a moment. I'm going to go and dump that on my desktop, and I'm just going to call that new, like so. So we created a file and we've exported it as an STL file. Now, those of you which are thinking, like I said a few moments ago, oh Matt, do I need to be designing stuff like that? You can do if you want to, but if you don't want to, there's a website out there called Thingiverse, which have got literally hundreds of thousands of items which you can just download those STL files and then dump them into your printer software and then just hit go on. Okay, so there are many angles to 3D printing, and I wanted to show you the whole process. Now, talking of the whole process, I've got a piece of software here it's actually called Simply 3D. It's actually a paid for model piece of software. It wasn't cheap. It was $150, and it's got many benefits to it. But do stress to note that for the last year, I've been using Repetier Host, which is a free tool, and it's worked fantastically well. I've just wanted an extra level of quality of prints and flexibility in what I'm doing, and you can see a little model up there on the screen that actually got printed out for my daughter this morning. So I'll put my hand out of the way so it focuses in. So that took 2 hours and 38 minutes to print. We will get to the topic of print times in a few moments time as well. And again, I would have saved about 30 minutes if I hadn't had the infill settings so high. And again, we'll find out what that is in a few moments. So I'm just going to quickly remove that off the printer bed. Let me go and grab that file which we just had on our desktop. So new, there we go. So there's a file, and I need to go and, in this actual case, I need to send it to a SD card, and I'm going to go and pop it in the printer, and we will have a nose at that. So I'm going to save the toolpath to the disk, call it new G-code, and that's finished on the disk. So let's go and run across to the printer. Now I am going to go and turn the 3D printer image on. You're going to see me walking over there. I'm going to go and plug this little SD card in the back, and then we're going to go and hit go on it. So apologies, you won't be able to see this bit. So all I'm doing is popping the card really badly in the back of the board. It says card inserted. I'm going to go down, print from SD card, like so. Choose the model. Right, so we've now got a combination of the heater element. So I'm just going to move this camera up so you can kind of see what's going on. Move the cable out of the way. There we go. So this printer is actually a Delta printer. So we have 3 arms coming down to the main extruder area here, which is basically we have filament in a big roll on the top of the printer. It comes down through this tube, goes into this heater element, and then it squeezes out this tiny little nozzle just down here, and it then prints it out layer by layer on the actual printer bed itself. Now I am using a heated printer bed which is ready, and it should kick off in a few moments. Now I do have this in a box because one of the downsides to 3D printing is that 3D printing is not the quietest of hobbies, especially if it's going on in your office here in the background. So I've made a wooden cabinet for it. So with that said, I think it's probably a good idea we move across to shout out corner so I can say a very good morning, good afternoon or evening to you. So with that said, working from the bottom up, good morning Gordon, Peter, James, Xjet, Sir Bruce is on here this morning. Good morning Sir Bruce. Thomas and Joanne. Oh, Joe, very good news on you and your driving license. That is classed as happy days. There's 2 thumbs up going on here. Gordon, Peter, Lee, Turbo Tyler, Henry, Scrolling up, Bonafide Pirate, good morning, sir, Mr. K. Scrolling up, James, good morning. Lee, good morning. The Prince has just kicked off here in the background. Good morning, Leon. Good morning, Simon's FPV. Good morning, Stick Mix. And I do need to run across to the printer remote just to make sure we're not left any goo behind in the bottom of the printer, which we have. I'm going to try and grab that amount. So, I'll tell you what, you're going to have to move off shout out corner because I'm sure you want to go and see the printer going. Give me a mo. There we go. So the printer's kicked off, and apologies, it's a little bit out of focus. I think it's a bit too close for the web camera to actually focus in. Good morning, Raj, Olin, aka Colin, good morning. Andy, good morning. Elijah, good morning. Phil, good morning. Who have I missed? Brian, good morning. Brad was on here the first thing as well. Roddy, good morning too. And Andy as well. And anybody else? Oh, AKO as well. I missed you too. Scrolling down. And obviously, if I've been and missed your name, I do apologise in the list. Right. So what have I written here in the notes? I mean, again, you can hear the printer going in the background. You can see it going on the screen. So I did get about 2 pages worth of notes here. So... And I also wanted to give you the whole process from designing an item in some CAD software to taking it across to the printer, kicking the printer off as we've got up there on the screen, and we can see our little bed being printed, which can then go on being used for our flight controller, so I can actually use that in an actual model itself. Now, there are 3 key parts to 3D printing. The first one is the design stage, which we saw just a few moments ago, wherever SketchUp's gone, is we can design anything, pretty much anything we want using computer-aided design. Now, it's not as scary as maybe it once, or again, CAD sounds really scary and really complex, but I do want to stress, I've watched only 2 videos on how to use SketchUp off YouTube, and I've kind of got to grips with the basics, okay? And this was one of the nice things about 3D printing, is that if you can't find something off the shelf, which we'll get to that topic in a few moments, because there are loads and loads of files out there which you can just download and print. If one of those files doesn't exist, or you have a special requirement, like that flight controller base which we've got here, that was a special requirement. Is that you can just go and design it yourself. Really, really cool. And the thing is, tools like SketchUp, which I'm using here in the background, which is underneath the 3D printer there, is free. Now, I'm mentioning SketchUp, but another really, really popular tool is Fusion 360. Again, it's available for free as well. Now, the thing is that if you have absolutely no experience of 3D software at all, then the thing to keep in your back of your mind is that there is a website called Thingiverse.com, and of course there's a link to that in the video description, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of items, and those STL files which we just created a few moments ago, is that they already exist on there. Now I want to give you some practical examples, and I'm just going to see if I can resize the printer. There we go. Let's pop her up in the corner. So I've got some practical examples here, some real life stuff, which I've in this case I've been and made. So the first one was, the first 2 which I'm going to cover with you are for the mini DRAC. So many of you know the mini DRAC, and you've got a receiver bay and you've got a video transmitter bay on the top, and they come with just some black core flute. And the thing is that my video transmitter was getting really hot. And the antenna mount for the L9R on top of here, I tried hot gluing it to the top of the model. It really didn't work out, and I needed a more permanent solution. So what I did is that I took the dimensions just using the calipers. Again, one of the most valuable tools for 3D printing is a pair of calipers. And then I designed, that's probably a better picture, and it will do thing view so you can see what's going on there. So I designed that, and there's another alternative as well with the mount being down further, or just the top hatch, and then you can print off the external files yourself. So that was a practical example. Also, which I don't know how well this is going to come out on the camera, can you see there Again, I didn't design that. That already existed on Thingiverse. Some nice bloke or woman had been and created these little catches as well. My mini drac, to be honest, I've just used sellotape up until now to hold the bottom on. No Velcro. And you'll see that I did actually put a bit of Velcro on, sellotape on top of that one. So there's a couple of practical examples. Also, Fat Shark goggles. My V3 Dominators didn't have a fan cover on the top, and I kept finding that I kept sticking my finger in it. On Thingiverse there was a file which took like 3 minutes to print, a little fan cover. Also for the diversity receiver didn't come with a cover, and you'll notice that that was in black, this was in orange. You kind of get the idea now that there are multiple colours available, and I printed off a little cover for that so that the screen would stay safe, and also that would stay securely in my actual goggles themselves. Now I do have a bag of parts which I've got here. I do want to share with you like 2 of my favourite prints of all time. Let me go and grab that one and that one. So drop that in my lap. This is, oh, that's not going to come out very well, is it, because of the lighting? Okay, you're going to have to take my word for it. That is an L9R or X8R antenna mount. So as we saw just a few moments ago, with that mount, it means that I can hold my antennas at 90, number one, they're at 90 degrees to each other, but also one of them is also twisted at 90 degrees to the other one, so then we end up getting maximum range from our antennas on our X8R or L9R receivers. So that one takes like a couple of minutes to print, maybe about 9 minutes to print, something like that, and it is one of my most printed 3D parts out of them all. The other thing which I've printed, and do this quite a lot with the different models, is some servo guards. So you imagine like on the FX61 flying wing or the mini Talon, the servos, the arms are pointing downwards and they can catch in the grass. Well, then I can just hot glue that on up underneath the wing. The servo can still move up and down, but when we come into land, it's got something to hit so that we don't end up potentially breaking our servos. Also a bigger one, well actually there's another one there. There is a FPV camera mount which sits in the front of the nose of a flying wing. So I've got one of these in the little Hardcore 24 wing, and I've also got those in the, what was it, the Flying Blade, and a collection of other models. Excuse me, I do have a, this one's only going to be a basic one. I also found this on the Thingiverse as well, so I can quickly just put that together. A little FPV pod, so I do it around that way, for a bonsai. So my original bonsai, which is up there on the wall, I'm actually going to resurrect it as a little FPV platform. So that obviously there's another side to that, there's a little back wall and a little top plate for it as well. Those took, the bigger piece took much longer. I think it was about 40 minutes to print out the bottom piece, and the other pieces weren't that long at all. And then, like I said, I've got a bag of little bits which I've preemptively been imprinted. There's different sizes of servo covers. Also, another favourite print of mine is, again, something really simple. I hope that's going to come out. That is a little servo plate. So you put your servo inside of there. Of course, you glue that to the model first, and that means that if you do break a servo, rip the gears out on it, for example, like I do quite frequently on the slope soaring wings, it does mean that I can glue that on there and very quickly go on and remove and replace that servo if I so wished. Also, these little plates are fantastic, say on the bonsai wing as well, because the foam gets a bit loose over time. Gluing one of those on, and it means that the servo stays in there a lot more. It's more stronger. That's my keyword. Anyway, just get myself back onto the topic. So yeah, don't worry if you don't have any experience of CAD at all. YouTube is absolutely littered with guides on like how to use Fusion 360 or SketchUp, for example. Or if you've got absolutely no inclination at all, then just go to Thingiverse, and I don't know, I'm just going to type in FPV into Thingiverse, and maybe you want to make a little FPV rover, which is really cool. Oh, what's the other one? Mini Talon. There's a little project which I'm working on here, is to do a twin motor Mini Talon. So normally, those of you who know about the Mini, or don't know about the Mini Talon, normally it's a pusher motor at the back. There's a chap called Mark. He's been created two modules which you can 3D print and then mount them on the wings, so you can have a twin puller for your Mini Talon. You can have cages on there, lots and lots of different FPV mounts. There's the pusher props, which I mentioned, puller or tractor motor props, which you mentioned about. You can even create canopies on here, a little air scoop. I've printed a couple of these. These print out really, really well, and they're super quick to print. Motor mounts, pan and tilt setups. If you can think of it, someone's probably already been and created it for you already, you know. And again, there's chances are something which is already out there can be adapted. So we have mentioned about CAD, and it may sound a little bit scary to you, and to be frank, you know, so I didn't touch SketchUp until much longer on and further in to really getting in with 3D printing. And of course there's loads and loads of like low poly tools, vases, however you want to pronounce them. If you can think of it, it's probably on Thingiverse. So and again, all those files are free. You literally, if we wanted the air scoop, for example, we go onto the page, you just go down and click on Thing Files, and look, there's the file, which is the STL file. You click on that, download that, and then put that into your software. Now, that was stage one. It's the design stage. You can design it yourself, or you can grab someone else's design. You don't need to be nerdy to do this, and it is actually, once you get the swing of things, it's actually pretty straightforward. The second stage is the print stage. Now, this is where you load up the STL file and put it into your software, and it's that concept of slices of bread. Okay, and what it will do is that your software will allow you to change the orientation, maybe choose the temperatures and the other details about your print. And then it will create the machine code, which is called G-code, for the 3D printer, because the 3D printer only knows how to move like the head around or the base around, or how to change temperatures, and that's what the software does for you. A few moments ago you saw me using Simplified 3D, and that's all it is. It's just some software. Maybe I want to change, or maybe you want to change the orientation around, maybe you want to print it upside down, maybe you want to add some supports or something like that, maybe you want to change the material, so from PLA to ABS, and we'll get onto materials of dip filaments in a few moments time. And then you can either print over USB, or you can print to an SD card, and then just printer kicks off, you know. That method which I just mentioned a few moments ago about the slices of bread, which is it's a process called slicing. Now, there are lots and lots of different slices out there. Simply 3D is a bit of a biased one because it is a paid product, and the quality of prints, which I've personally found out of that software, have been absolutely fantastic. Has needed a little bit of tweaking on some specific parts which I've put in there, but the general results, I'm absolutely impressed with it, and I think personally now think it's worth the $150. But I do want to stress, most 3D printers do come with their own software, and like I said, for a good year I use Repetier Host with the slicing program called Slicer, and that works fantastically well. I just wanted the extra features which we've got in Simplified 3D, so don't think you need to pay $150 for a bit of software. Honestly, you don't need it. It's only when you want to start doing really advanced stuff, then the tools, they're like, there's in like 2, maybe 3 extra tools which have made it worthwhile for me. You probably won't even know about those or find a requirement of those until much later on. And the last stage, which is after your part has been printed. Now, it doesn't matter how good your 3D printer is or how good the software you're using is. In fact, let me just go and move that out a little bit so you can see what's going on. We're almost finished, I think. It doesn't matter how good your 3D printer is, you are going to need some form of finishing. That could be as simple as getting a craft knife, which I don't have here, and just getting it to clean up the edges. You may decide that you might want to use some acetone, so you can give your models a very, very shiny, smooth finish to them, because acetone will melt most PLA plastics, and it will give you a very smooth, glossy finish to the actual model itself, which you've been imprinted. And oh yeah, you could also finish the model with which you've been imprinted with paint as well. I'm thinking about, I printed Dave one of those mini drat covers, for example. So he primed it and then sprayed it. I think it was orange to go, or silver to go in with the rest of his model. So you can finish it, and it has literally just been finished. So we're going to grab that off the printer bed. So I'm not too sure how long that took. And I can't see a craft knife anywhere. I need to turn that fan off as well. Control, temperature, fan. Turn that right off. And I don't think I'm going to get that off that. Oh yeah, I am. So normally, there we go. So there you go. You can see that I've just pulled that off the print bed. So just go and turn that off. So there you go. Let's show you on the camera. That is what has just been imprinted. So we designed that a few moments ago. We put it into the software, we sliced it, and then we put it across to the printer. Let me just show you the bottom as well. Again, that funny line down there is the gap between the masking tape, which I was using on the heater bed. And there we go. Again, that may not look important to you, but for me, that's fantastic. Because it was, how long we've been live for? Oh, half an hour. Okay, and that's been with quite a bit of a chit chat. So half an hour from start to finish. I've got a part here which I can just pretty much clean up with my fingernails. And I could then go on, glue that in the bottom of the model, get the flight controller installed, and then that means that I, or you, as the case may be, ready to get iNav, in this case, off and installed in my model or your model, as the case may be. So yeah, 3D printed part, created, literally designed out of the box. You saw me do it, sliced up in the software, off across to the 3D printer. And instant gratification is that I can now get that flight controller into a model later this morning if I wanted to. So anyway, I do have some notes. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go and turn that camera off up there because I've been and turned the close the door on it. Now I do have some notes here, and I'll share my notes with you so you can see what's going on. Let me move this out of the way. 3D printing, it is a bit of a lie. Okay, and I kind of hinted at this a short while ago. When it comes to 3D printing, you are creating a 3D printed object, but you're actually printing one layer at a time. So that printer head, which you saw moving around, is that all it's doing is depositing a thin layer of plastic in one layer at a time, like a loaf of bread, and then it builds up, and that's how you create a 3D printed model, 3D printed object. Now, the most common type, and we need to stay realistic here, there are many, many different types of 3D printers, but the most common type, which me and you will come across as hobbyists or general consumers, is a type called fusion deposition modeling, okay, which is basically the process of just printing in one layer at a time. Now, there are other different types available, but they are generally very, very expensive and not very mainstream. So do keep in the back of your mind, 3D printing is the term which is bounded around, but in reality, all it is 2D printing, because you're printing one layer at a time. It just so happens that you're stacking those layers on top of each other each time. Now, there are two main types of printer which are like available for us to use or to buy, should I say. Now, I've got some pictures of these. So you have, and again, you're gonna have to excuse me, I don't know the technical names for these. I just know these printers, which you can see up on the back of, on the screen, as the printer which the printer head moves backwards or moves side to side. We can see that we've got the belt running there. And then typically the bottom tray, the bed, okay, because most 3D printers will print onto a bed of some form, normally a heated bed, and then move the bed around, and the printer head moves around and backwards and forwards as well, and that's how it makes a picture, the Eiffel Tower in this case. So that's the standard type, and The other type is the type which I've got, which is a Delta printer. So you'll see that in this case, or you won't see, there we go, it's probably a little bit better for you. This is a Delta printer, so you've got 3 prongs coming down to the printer head. And now here's the thing, is that from my personal experience, is that I've never used a normal 3D printer with the one which you could probably buy for like the little fabricator or something like that from Hobby King. I've never used one of those. I can't comment on how good those are. But what I can do is comment on how the biggest positive and also the biggest negative to a Delta printer. Now, the Delta type printer is one of the fastest types of printers which you can get. There's just something to do with the way it just works. It typically will make a print, the actual print process much quicker. Okay, not by a well, it is actually by a considerable amount. Stuff like parts like this, they just fly out the Delta printer. And again, I'm just feeling that print, and it's actually come out really well. Look, have a look at that. I'll take some close-up photos of that and stick that in the Facebook group so you can see how well that came out. I'm really impressed with that. Anyway, Delta printers, they print really quickly. Now, the downside to a Delta printer is that you must calibrate it extremely accurately. It's not one of those things which you can bodge, and it will vary from printer to printer. It was a very scary process for me how to do this with the M66 command, and again, it does have an auto level feature, but I never really got that to work very well. I do it to calibrate mine manually. But that said, once it is calibrated, and the calibration process is literally the case of getting the printer head so that it knows where the bottom is, wherever it is on the actual flat printer bed itself. And that does sound a bit scary, but once you get used to it, it's really straightforward. And of course, other printers will have auto calibration features in there already for you, so it'll be like clicking a button and off it goes. But like I was saying, my personal experience has only been with a Delta printer, and to be brutally honest, I am absolutely impressed with it. Mine did cost me 400 USD. There is a link to the Great Scott video which introduced me into that printer specifically. It's down in the video description for you. Go and take a watch of that. The chappie will just walk you through the build, most of the build itself, talk about heated bed as well, and some of the prints which he's made. And again, that was the video which inspired me to go on and actually just go on and get exactly the same printer. So there are 2 printer types. You've got a Delta printer which looks like that. That's the only type of 3D printer which I can give you my personal experience of. It's fast, but it's a pain in the ass when it comes to calibration. But once you get that calibration suite on, wow, does it chuck out some fantastic quality prints continuously. Absolutely brilliant. Or the other standard type, which is normally the type where the bed moves as well as the extruder head itself. Now, this brings us nicely onto the topic of filament. And again, I can see there's lots and lots of chat going on in the background. And the one comment which I look at is should I keep my 3D printer in the bedroom? No, Bruce, you shouldn't keep the 3D printer in the bedroom because they are very noisy devices. That's why I've got mine in a box. I've got foam insulation in there as well, and I still class it as being noisy. Right, moving on to the topic of filament. Now, filament is the type, and again, I'm very generally speaking, because we're keeping here like mainstream, generally speaking, it's the type of plastic which you use to print out. Now, you may look at these 2 parts here, and you may think, well, Matt, that one's black and that one's white. But the irony is exactly the same material, and it's a material called PLA, and PLA is the easiest and the simplest material for you to use. Okay, it's easy to work with, it's easy to clean up. Generally speaking, I'm getting maybe a 9 out of 10 success rate on prints now with PLA, because the print is dialed in and decent software as well. Well, classic, better than average software for slicing. I'm literally getting 9 out of 10 prints working every single time. It's very easy to work with, and it's also damn cheap as well. So PLA. It's the most common type, and you can get it in any color you like. You name it, if it's in the rainbow, including transparent, you can get PLA in that color. Now, there is another material type, and it's called ABS. Now, annoyingly, I don't have my main ABS part with me because it's about to go into a model, which is it's actually an FPV camera mount. And the reason why you would want to use ABS is because ABS is a tougher plastic, which makes it perfect for instances where the actual mold or the thing which you've been imprinted is going to receive a lot of knocks. So for example, an FPV camera mount is a perfect time to use the ABS plastic, but it does come with some downsides. ABS plastic, number one, it's smelly. Okay, you know that burnt plasticky smell? That's ABS. Also, it requires a heated bed as well, and not all 3D printers have heated beds, and not all 3D printers can get up to the temperature, which is about 80 degrees C, to help that filament stick to the actual bed itself. Now, there is a new material kicking around. I've got a roll of it myself. That's what the bright orange stuff is, which you saw a few moments ago. There you go. There's an example of some PETG. Okay, now PETG is, well, it's not all bright orange. I've just chosen bright orange because it was suggested that that was the best filament to try PETG with from a friend. So Stuart, big hat tips you, sir. Appreciate that fella. Anyway, coming back onto the topic, PETG is a nice happy medium between the ease of printing of PLA. Like I said, PLA prints are very, very simple to do. Pretty much every single 3D printer will print PLA. But on the flip side is that PETG is also a tougher plastic. So it has, for all intents and purposes, there is one or two downsides. It has the ease of printing of PLA, and it has the extra strength of ABS, but it's not so tricky to print. Doesn't necessarily require a heated bed, and it doesn't stink. Okay. Now there are other types of filament out there. Andrew B, which you may or may not be on. TPU, good point. I forgot about that one as well. I can't print TPU on that printer. Anyway, there are other types of material filament out there, such as carbon fiber impregnated materials. So if you've got something which is going to take a lot of abuse, then you can get this filament with carbon fiber strands in there. Obviously, that's more expensive. It will also knacker the nozzle, which that filament gets extruded out of to make each individual line. And yeah. And there's a collection of others. Now, there is another filament type, and Sir Bruce, thank you for pointing that one out, is called TPU. Now, I can't print TPU on that printer, and the reason why I can't print TPU on that printer is because the bit which is pushing the filament, I want to just grab you a roll. There you go. That's probably the easiest thing to do. There you go. Oh, that's not the best one. Let me grab a roll. Now, these rolls, I've chosen pink. There you go. Get the girly colours out. Again, sorry, I've got two girls, so if it's pink or purple, they're well up for it. So that's a roll of filament. That's a 1 kilogram roll. You can buy it anywhere from like 10 quid off eBay up to 30 quid. The latest two rolls which I've been and bought were from a company called Rigid Ink. Okay, and I've bought their PLA, the 1.75mm stuff, and it has been the best PLA I've ever come across. Now, you can get that on Amazon, or you can do what I did and save myself 4 quid and bought it off their website, because they did put Rigid Ink in their Amazon listing title. So that's the best stuff which I've come across. Buy it in a kilogram roll. This will last you about 2 years, something like that, depending on how much you're printing, and that's the filament. Okay, on the end of there. Now, do note that's only 1.75mm wide, apparently, or diameter on it. And the thing to note is that that's a rigid plastic. So the little cog which is pushing it down to the actual extruder, the hot end piece, is quite a distance away. Now there is another material called TPU, which is a flexible filament, and only certain printers will print it because you need a specialized setup to print it, and TPU is a flexible material, so it would be a fantastic material to maybe print a phone case, for example, or something to do with keeping your antennas safe, or anywhere which you need flexibility in whatever part you're printing. And yes, I did recently print myself off a phone case for my phone on the printer as well. It's got to be done, you know, and that's what's going to happen to you. If you get yourself a 3D printer, you'll end up printing yourself phone cases and goodness knows what else. So yeah, so Bruce, good point. TPU, it's pretty cool. And by the way, you can see the chat going up. Pink for Craig Penny. Good morning. Sorry, good evening, 7 Demo 7. I've just seen your name going above my head there as well. So, right, happy days. Right, moving on. Right, there are some myths and there's some facts about 3D printing. So, number one is that there's a myth that it's fast. And the reality is 3D printing is anything but fast. Okay? You can, as you just saw, print small things off very, very quickly. Anything bigger than small, and again, that one, that would have taken about 2 hours to print, that little thing there. So it normally what happens, and I've seen it with other people as well, is that you get your 3D printer arrive, you try a few small things, and then you go for something absolutely massive to like the limits of the printer abilities, and try and print out like a 1 foot tall vase or something like that. Okay, that would just take hours. One of the longest prints which I've done was for the Team Legit FG36. It was an FPV camera mount on the front, and I think that took about 6 hours to print out. It was a big chunk of plastic by the end of it, and I've not broken it yet. And yeah, so don't be under any illusions. 3D printing is not fast, and do keep in the back of your mind that little item which we just printed is very small. That's the size of my hand, and it's not very thick either. It's only 2 millimeters thick, so it was always bound to be quick to print. You can see my writing on here. 3D printing is easy, okay? That really does depend upon your printer. You can see my writing on there. The calibration on my Delta printer is an absolute cock. There is no other words to explain that. But once you get it dialed in to that little sweet spot, it is absolutely brilliant. It's cheap, okay? Filament is cheap. Like I said, even the premium stuff, okay, is 30 quid for a kilo. I can give you a very good cost estimation. If I get my mouse back on that part which we printed a few moments ago. That item just cost me 8 pence to print. 8 pence. Okay, so when you see these 3D printed parts on Banggood, for example, or elsewhere, keep in the back of your mind that tiny little part just cost me 8 pence, and that is a realistic value because I did put the correct price per kilo into the software. So printing parts is really cheap. Obviously we're ignoring electricity here, but the bit which is not cheap is buying the 3D printer itself. Now there are cheap kits out there. That one cost me $400 USD, and I do think I got slapped a stupid amount in import tax as well. But it happens, you know. The actual printer itself is expensive. There is another myth: you can print anything, which in theory you can print anything if you can chop it up into small enough bits to actually fit on your printer bed. If it does fit, and if it doesn't die halfway through, then potentially the answer is yes, but it's going to take a bloody long time to print. There's also a bit of a myth that every print is perfect. I can categorically say not every single one of my prints are perfect. I think I put a photo of a eaten mess which went on the 3D printer only 2 days ago in the Facebook group. Not every print is successful, and you do need to keep an eye on it and tend to it, especially at the very beginning of a print as well, just to make sure you've not got any filament which has come out on the printer bed and then gone off and off by itself. And the last one is 3D printing is no bones about it, absolutely cool. Okay, I can have pretty much anything which I need. If I haven't made myself a stash of parts here, like already which I've lined up for other models, I or you could design anything you wanted and print it there and then. Instant gratification, and that is utterly cool. Okay, there's no other words for it. 3D printing is just plain cool. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, what does that mean for hobbyists like me and you? And again, I'm going to pick up the pace a bit here. The short answer is that actually, if you're an RC hobbyist, you're probably going to get more use out of a 3D printer than the average Joe user. Okay, the reality is the average Joe user has probably seen a couple of items on Thingiverse and going, for what I'm going to do 3D printing and buy a printer, print 3 things out, and it's just going to collect dust on the side. The thing is that if you're an RC hobbyist, the likelihood is that you've probably already got a couple of projects going on in the back of your head. You wouldn't mind some covers for your mini track, covers for your Fat Shark goggles, and maybe you want to design something, maybe you want to print out some ribs, and you see the potential of what could be done within the hobby, and having a 3D printer for your RC projects, you would probably get the most use out of it. And again, I'm being realistic here. I only ever really print RC items. Printing off some from my daughter, or one of my daughters earlier, was very much out of the norm. Pretty much everything which I print is RC related. Okay, it could be from a flight controller board to a servo cover to a motor mount to an FPV pod. You know, I have a hobby, and the 3D printer comes in really, really useful for that. Now, there is a note here, is that what happens if you feel that you can't afford a 3D printer? Because let's face it, they're not freaking cheap at all. Now, the thing is that if you look on the Thingiverse website, there is, and why don't I just come show you, there is an option on here. Where is it? I made one. Share, remix it. I made one. Collect, download files. Anyway, the point is that on Thingiverse you can download the files. There is a website called 3D Hubs, and you can either go directly from Thingiverse, or you can upload the STL files directly, maybe something which you designed or somebody else has designed. Upload the files to 3D Hubs. They will find a local printer somewhere, ideally somewhere in your area, most likely in the same city where you live, and somebody else will print off that part for you for a fee, and of course they can ship it to you, or potentially, depending on who they are, you could then go on and collect the item from whoever's been imprinted it for you. And also, again, it's becoming more commonplace now. If you look on eBay, for example, I've even seen it on Banggood as well, there are popular parts on there which you can just buy for a couple of quid, and they'll send it to you. Obviously, depending on how much material, how much time it took the printer to make the item. So if you don't have a 3D printer, then you can get these items printed by somebody else who does have a 3D printer, and they'll charge you a modest fee, and they'll get it shipped to you. Now, here is one stark reality, and you probably noticed it earlier. I'm just going to hide it on there. Okay, frankly speaking, for all the parts which I've printed in the last year, it is not covered the cost of the 3D printer, and I do have an expensive man toy. That just went probably wrong, didn't it? So yeah, I do have a very expensive man toy, and 3D printing is very cool, and that's all I'm saying. Right, so there you go, that's 3D printing in a nutshell. We literally went from the very beginning of designing something from scratch, getting it onto the printer, getting it printed, and I was kind of hoping in the time which it took to print we would cover all that, but we've just had a deeper look to 3D printing. So I sincerely hope this has been, and you found this RC Coffee Chat, it's a little bit different to some of the things which we've covered previously, but at least now you've got an idea what's involved in actually printing something like this, which I'm 100% impressed with the quality of the print. I'm going to go and take some photos on my phone I'll put a couple of photos of this in the Facebook group. There is a link to the FaceBalls group in the video description underneath this video, so you can take a look at it and see for yourself what the kind of quality of the print is been and come out like. And again, that was printed live with you. You just saw it printing out on the web camera a few moments ago. Now, before I wrap up, there is one other topic which I just want to squeeze in at the end because I feel it's worthy of squeezing in. Now, many of you know about the Mini Talon, one of the best 35 quid you could buy for a model. Okay, it's a lot of foam for the model, and those of you which are doing medium to long range FPV, you can pack a lot of battery in quite a stable, well, it's an extremely, there's no other words for it, an extremely stable FPV platform. Personally, I own two of them. I've got one which is set up, it's been just a workhorse, you know, flies every single time, absolutely amazing model. And I've got another one which I'm going to set up for twin tractor motors on. Now, we've said, and I've said, and I've seen other people said this as well, why don't they bring out a micro version? And that's the thing which I want to share with you. Literally noticed this yesterday. I posted it in the Facebook group. I know many of you have already been put on the alert by Arrival. There is coming out a Nano Talent, and I think it's absolutely mint. And I also want to go on the record and say it's really... Oh, I can pre-order it. I'm going to go and pre-order it in just a moment's time. Anyway, didn't realise it come up for pre-order. Definitely going to get myself one of these. It does come with a collection of other kit. Perfectly honest, kit which I don't want. I love kits of models where I can put my own electronics in. This one does come with a flight controller. It's a plug and play version, which generally means the motor is going to be crap. The ESC is going to be equally as crap. Whatever else they include, servos are also going to be crap. And that is my honest opinion on plug and fly kits. The only exception actually was the Durafly EF Extra. That was a fantastic plug and fly model, or plug and play model. Thoroughly impressed with the quality and the components in that. But on a model like this, I just prefer a kit, because let's be honest, I'm going to change that motor. I've got some of those DYS fire motors, the 2206 ones, the ones which chuck out 1.7 kilos of thrust out the ass end of it. I'm going to mount that on the back of it. And I'm not going to be putting a tiny little ESC in it, and I want to put a 40 amp ESC in there just to... Anyway, point made. Micro Talent. Look at that! Where have you been all my life? I am right now. I am so into smaller models. I am having a clear out of the office here at the moment. Do expect some foam snow in very shortly, aka this weekend. You might want to look out for a live episode. Is that I'm going to get rid of some of my models. And if they're not found new homes by Sunday, they are going to might have a few minor accidents, because I am frankly fed up with the amount of space which they take up. And smaller models like this are absolutely brilliant, because then I've got a variety of different models, and they're fun to fly, you know. And of course I'm going to keep some of the bigger models. FX61, that one's always staying with me. The Mini Drac. Not particularly mini, to be perfectly honest, but it's not a big model. It's not like that bloody great big FMEG 540, which I can only really fly at one of the two flying sites, which they've got nice mown grass, and that's not normally where I fly. So smaller models like this, like the Micro Sky Munter, right up my street. Micro Talon. If this thing flies half as good as a Mini Talon, we are going to be into the class of happy days. So I've literally just been spotted myself. It's coming in. It's just been available to pre-order. I'm going to go and pre-order myself one, even though it costs $100, and even though it's going to be full of crap which I won't be using. I just like the format. You've seen me over the past couple of weeks slowly migrate into smaller models. There is a Delta Jet, which some of you may have seen, posted in the Facebook group. I'm just liking smaller models. I can cram more of them in the IKEA bag and walk off to the flight line, you know. They don't take up so much space. They don't get much of a bollocking from the missus when they turn up. It's normally a case of, oh, isn't that one cute? That Delta Jet, she gave me a shoe-in about it. And he said, actually, it's quite nice. I agree with that. Tell you what, we're here chatting about it. How cool's that? That's the Delta Jet which I'm talking about. Can't remember much. What was that? I'll say $60, whatever it was. And it's in EDF. But look, this is why I like this one. Look at that. Moulded. I think it's an ABS plastic. No, it's a whatever plastic on the bottom. And then I haven't finished wiring it up. And we've got a 50mm EDF stuck in the arse end. And nice big electronics bay. Can get that up. Huge, great big electronics bay on the top of there. Nice little pin on the bottom as well. I really like this kit so far. Obviously, we haven't flown it yet. So, as you know, we hold our final judgment to see what it's like in the sky. And it comes with detachable nose! Ta-da! I thought that was a really good idea because it's always the nose which breaks off. What is it? The Radjet is not a Radjet until the nose is snapped off and both the winglets, the nodules on the wings have fallen off. Whereas that one, the nose will fall off by itself, and it's a really quite strong magnet, which is on there. You've seen it jump out of my hand. So Delta Jet, I'm really looking forward to flying that one. And again, it's small, you know. I can stuff it on the shelf, and it's not going to take up much space, and I can get a whole raft of little models in here. And they don't clutter up my office. So anyway, coming back to the topic, Nano Talon. Is this going to be the next Micro Sky Munter? I don't know. I'm going to go and pre-order one right now. Remember, I'm going to go and buy that out of my own cash. So if it's shite, you will find out about whether it's shite very, very soon. And if it's not, then you'll also find out about that very, very soon as well. And I must apologise, is I've really just not seen much of your chat. You've seen how much chat's gone on above my head. Apologies, it was a bit of an intensive one today with the topic of 3D printing, and I also wanted to squeeze in that that Nano Talon on as well. Like I said, I will go and pre-order one in just a few moments' time. In fact, let me just go and click on refresh on there, and I will go and wait for that to update. Go and get that ordered in a few moments' time. If you want to hold off until it's arrived, I will pay for expedited delivery. The second it gets in, you know, I'll give you my honest opinion on it. And remember, I'm going to pay $100. So that model better be pucker, you know. So those of you which are thinking about it, I would personally suggest maybe you hold off on it, because right now it's an unknown. But keep in the back of your mind, if it's half as good as the mini Talon, we should be onto a winner. And again, I'm looking at that model because point blank, it's a smaller model. It can go on the shelf, and it can go on the shelf with a collection of other smaller models. So anyway, Scott says, has the Delta got a rudder? Good question, Scott. She does. Da-da-da. And you wouldn't believe how well engineered that one. I obviously, we're going to save final judgment until it actually flies, because it could fly like a bag of poo, you know. So holding off final judgment. But up until now, I'm actually genuinely impressed with the build quality. In there's a servo, and it's a lovely moulded piece of plastic which mounts up underneath, which I've just put a bit of Yoo-hoo piss poor on the bottom. Stuff that up underneath. I've got the servo mounted in the top, and then the servo will poke out in there, and it's really rigid in there, absolutely fantastic, and I can have a rudder on it as well. Annoyingly, I've lost one of the little plates, but we won't go there on that. So yeah, first impressions, obviously not flying it yet, and it did turn up a bit squashed there, but shit happens, doesn't it? And the little covers, I think they're really good, so my hopes are high on this one. So I really do hope it flies well and doesn't eat batteries for breakfast, which it's an EDF, so I'm sure it will do. But for just sheer looks, it looks pretty damn cool, and it's quite well engineered. So I'll keep you updated on that one. We'll hopefully get it flying for Sunday. We'll give it a damn good lob and see what happens. No idea just yet, so good question. Jazzy says, Matt, we think you will lose the nose. I probably agree with you. I might put a bit of tape on that for the first few flights. just to see what happens to it when it lands. Might have to put one of those little Bluetooth alarms in it. So anyway, number one, I would like to apologise. I've seen there's been so much chat going on above my head, and I'm just here looking over on the screen as well. Apologies if I've missed any questions which you've had about 3D printing. If you do have any questions, you can ask them in two different ways. Obviously, after this episode's been finished, underneath this video in the comment section on the video on YouTube. Or you can nip across to the Facebook group. There's a link to that, the Rag the Nuts Off Facebook group, in the video description for you. Click on the link, press the join button on the right-hand side of the screen. One of us will pick up your request and just ask away. And that's the other thing which I'd like to take special note of, the Facebook group. There are over 1,000 cool pilots like me and you in that group. If I'm not around there's topics which I just leave alone because I just haven't got a clue, you know? That's the point. There's 1,000+ cool RC pilots like me and you. Somebody in that group knows the answer. So if you get stuck, don't be afraid to ask a daft question, because I can assure you, over the past week and for the last 12 months, I've asked a lot of daft questions and there's been some fantastic help and support. And I'd like to say a massive thank you to anybody and everybody who has been and helped me personally, and those of you which have been helping others. It's a really nice community to be in, and like I said, there's a link to that in the video description for you. So on that note, it is time for me to go. Thank you very much for joining me here live today. If this is your first time here for an RC Coffee Chat, thank you very much for joining us here live today. My name's Matt. If you'd like to subscribe underneath this video, where it says Matthew Ogborn, click on the red button, and I'll see you in the next episode. So on that note, have a fantastic day's flying if you're out flying today, and if you are out flying today, please chuck a battery in for me, because I have now been up for 28 hours, and I'm frankly going to go and get some sleep. So on that note, I'm saying good night rather than good morning. See you later. Cheerios.